so I'm doing my May wrap up. I will say, like, this month was pretty good for me. Like, I had one book where I kind of started it and I was like, you know what? I'm not feeling it. I think I'll go back to it like another time. But all the rest of these books, I would say, like, I've done pretty well on. I am doing a vlog. It'll come out in May, so you kind of will see my thoughts on some other books that I've read. But I don't want to talk about those right now. I'm just mainly going to talk about these. So the first one I read was, I finally got around to this book. It's been on my Kindle for a while. So I've been really trying to not only get through my physical copies that I own and that I've been trying to get through, but I also been trying to get through books that have been on my Kindle for a while. Like, a lot of times, like, I'll be like, ooh, that sounds good, so I'll add something onto my Kindle, and then it pushes all my other books down. And so I have to, like, scroll to, like, oh yeah, that's right, I need to read this freaking book. It's been on my Kindle for a while. So I finally get around to this one. So I ended up reading Whispers of the Deep by Emma Hamm, and I love this one. This was so good. The world building. I definitely am more attracted to something that's a little bit more urban fantasy more than high fantasy. I think I liked this world so much because it still takes place on Earth. So you have the characters of Argus and Mina. Now, Mina has been living down in, basically, humans have had to build these pods, these like homes made of glass in the ocean, because there was something going on the surface, like some kind of natural disasters that's, you could possibly say maybe climate change. It did not tell you, but maybe it was implied, possibly. Anyways, Earth was like not happy and was like, fuck y'all, so humans basically have had to live in these cities, glass cities underneath, in the ocean. So they have like these different ones. They're called Alpha, Beta. Then there's one that's called Gamma. Alpha is the one that has like all the rich people. Yeah. All the people that have wealth. Beta's obviously for, obviously the working class, So Mina is a part of the working class in Beta. And she's a welder. And I was like, fucking yes. I love when women have like types of jobs like that, like welding or whatever it is, where I'm like, plenty of women can get into welding. It is a interesting job. Just definitely wear your safety, your PPEs, wear your safety equipment, because you can go blind from the welding, sparks and stuff like that. You can go blind from that. So you have to definitely wear safety goggles. I had thought about it at one time, being a welder, so don't know how good I would have been, but yeah. So she's a welder, and there's like this leak in one of the rooms, and so she's trying to repair this leak. Otherwise it could, make things worse. The ocean could come in, So they obviously have different areas where it could close off if there's some type of thing without affecting the rest of the area. So she's working on this area, and she sees something in the water. And then she ends up looking at it, and it's staring right at her. And she was like, oh, that's an undine. I think that's how you pronounce it, undine. And so they're basically mer people, merman, mermaids and mermen, And so this merman, this undine, is looking at her. And he has kind of like this hate, where he looks like he hates her. And so it has a backstory of that ever since the humans, which Undines don't call them humans. What does he call her again? A chromo? A chromo? They call them achromos. And they hate the humans because the humans basically came into their ocean, started putting all of this metal down there and different things that's hurting the ecosystem. So they're about like, you know, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Aquaman, if you kind of think about it, kind of like Aquaman. So, you know, they don't like that the humans are there, and so humans have built like these weapons. So anytime like Undines come close, they like zap them and stuff like that. Kind of like you know, bugs coming close to like the little bug trappers and you know. So he has this hate in his heart for humans, but he's intrigued with Mira, you know, or Mina. He's intrigued with Mina. And so I wrote down, Mina lives and works on this dome in the ocean as an engineer welder. That's what they call her. They call her an engineer. She was born and raised inside this place, but she's always been attracted to the sea. One day she sees an Undine, a merman species, near the glass. He manages to break the glass she is fixing, and she manages to escape. He sees that she's fixing the crack, so he takes his long tail and whacks it enough to where it causes a bigger hole. And so she manages to escape out of the room and close it off. And then she sees him in the room floating around, and he comes to close to the glass. You know, obviously it's like one of those little porthole kind of things, like when you think about it, like for, you know, like submarines have like those little closed door porthole stuff. That's why I kind of thought about it. I kind of thought of it as like a little porthole. And so he comes close to the glass and he's looking at her, and you could tell he's intrigued with her too. You know, like he's deep down attracted to her, though he doesn't want to be, you know. So she ends up going out into the ocean to try to repair it on the outside. And he ends up grabbing her and taking her. And so now it's like he's kidnapped her from Beta. And now she's got like, you know, a mask on and everything. So she obviously is, you know, okay. And she's got like a wetsuit and everything. And so she has this robot. She ends up getting this robot. And it's called, what was it called again? I can't remember what it was called again. But I think it started with like a B. I think it started with B. I can't remember what it was called though. But she has like this robot that's basically learning the Undine's language, and she ends up getting this chip from the robot and implants it on the back of her ear so she can communicate with the Undine. And now the robot has to, like, you know, the android has to like still listen to his speech, so that way it can get like a translation chip, you know, so that way, or no, that's what she does. Totally messing up. She goes and she attaches it onto the back of his ear so he can understand her. And then now she's got to like try to communicate with him to where he can understand her, but she's still not able to understand him. So he ends up taking her to this like area of the ocean where there's still like air. There's like a bubbles of air. So she ends up being under there, but because, you know, she's not getting like sunlight and different things like that, it's making her sick. And so she'll eventually die down there if she doesn't, if she doesn't go and get, sunlight, things like that. If you're not getting any type of sunlight, you need vitamin D. You have to get vitamin D some way. And if you're not getting vitamin D from the sun, you have to get it in some other way. So she, obviously, when they would live in the ocean, they were obviously taking like supplements and things like that, you know. So she was how many days and weeks without like supplements. So it was making her sick. So, you know, like I said, he hates all humans and he kidnaps her so he can get her to tell him how to take down their, the humans and, take down those buildings and stuff like that. So this one here was definitely a slow burn. It definitely was a slow burn because, you know, he really hates her at first, but he, you know, obviously doesn't want to kill her. He could easily kill her if he wanted to, because he's huge. He's big. You know, if you could see from the picture, he's huge and massive, and he has this long fucking tail, like this really long tail, and he could swim really fast. And he has these long claws, you know, and so whenever he touches her, he has to be careful that he's not going to scratch her and things like that. So I really enjoyed this one. He ends up like finding this pod that ended up getting created from years ago, and it has a whole backstory to it. And then also there's like another story, which I'll talk about in another book. So I really enjoyed this one because it was a slow burn. It wasn't something to where they got together like super quick. And I really appreciated that, because I'm like, if this is a hate to love, I want to feel that kind of hatred, you know, of this person. And so the more times he's around Mina, you know, more Argus is around Mina, the more he gets to know her, and the more attracted he comes to her, to where he starts to have feelings for her and realizes that, you know, she's his mate. And other things that kind of go on in the story, that kind of like, there are certain things that kind of don't make any sense. Like if you do think about it, you're like, how do they talk in the water kind of thing? How can he understand her if she's wearing a mask and they're in the water? How does he understand her? You know, and all that stuff, you know? So I mean, there are some things that you could say that don't make any sense. But for me, I was like, I'm enjoying myself to where I'm like, I'm not going to overanalyze it, you know? I'm like, I'm enjoying myself. And also, like, they're having sex in the water, and I'm kind of like, girl, I'm like, you're going to get a yeast infection. You're going to get a yeast infection being in that ocean, girl, because, you know, that's not good. So I'm like, I could overanalyze it and be like, well, what about this? What about this? But I enjoyed myself a lot in this book. I'll just say that. I love the world building. I loved the characters and how they got to know each other and they became friends. And then the point of like them falling for each other and doing other things, you know, bow chicka wow wow, you know, and all that stuff. And he has 2 hearts and 2 peens. So I was like, best of both worlds, girl. Okay, you know, there you go. But you know, but I enjoyed myself a lot. I really loved that one. It was good. I just, this is kind of like, you know, there's different world building worlds I love from different authors, like Naomi Lucas. I love her world building, but I'm always not a fan of the heroes. But this one here, it's like, he was a big softie. Argus was a big softie. Even though he's like, he first hated her, he wasn't about to hurt her. He needed her for like, you know, to get his revenge, you know, to take down like the human, you know, things and stuff like that. Those human buildings, you know, underwater. So, and there was other things going on in the story that weren't, like, you knew there was other things going on, but it wasn't talked about in that book, like in this first book. And then I read the other book, you know, and then I'll talk about that one. But I'll talk about this one here. The next one was The Lovely Dark. Now, I didn't want to read this one at first because I haven't really been enjoying a lot of Juliet Cross lately. But I was like, oh, Emma Hamm's in it. And because I read that book, you know, I read the other one. What was it again? Whispers of the Deep. Because I read Whispers of the Deep, I was like, oh, well, let me check out this Emma Hamm one. And it was another story in the series. So in the first book, Whispers of the Deep, there was a part of the book where the Undine, which is Argus, found skeletal remains of a human and of one of his kind, an Undine. And they were together, like they were embracing, you know, like they died together or something like that. And I was like, what's the story of that one? That one's intriguing to me, because I'm like, okay, so obviously another Undine fell in love with a human years ago and we just don't know the story. That was the fucking story. So that one there, oh man, that one was good. I didn't love that one. I gave it a 4, but I still enjoyed it. I still enjoyed it. I think the reason why I gave it 4 because I wanted more. I wanted more to the story. I'm like, I want more. I wanted a whole fucking book. I didn't want just a novella, you know, so I wanted the whole book. So the first one in this book here, in this anthology, was Wave Song. So we had Ember and Alice. Now, Alice and her father are ocean explorers, but their planet is dealing with a lot of catastrophes on the surface. So humans decide to start creating these underwater cities. Her father's the one that created these underwater cities. So this is like the backstory of how these got created. I said, so the human race can continue to survive. I said, unfortunately, they're ruining ocean ecosystems, and the creatures called undines that live in the ocean don't want humans there messing up their home. Understandable, you know? Look how much we're fucking up the surface, you know? So Alice goes out on a small sub to check out ocean life, and she runs across an undine named Ember. She is fascinated with him, and he is equally with her. She has a small android bot that learns Ember's language, and she is able to communicate with him. I said, this was such a sweet story. You could see how much they loved each other and just wanted to be together, even though they are different species and they're on the brink of a war between both of their species. And that's basically what it was. It was basically the beginning of this war between the humans and the undines. Like, there was stuff going on with them already, you know? And so you really got to know a little bit more of the backstory, and like her father, who was basically this, you know, scientist and all that stuff. He loved the ocean, but also, you know, he had to create this, you know, world for these humans to continue to survive. Otherwise they would have died. Like, there was like, you know, eruptions of volcanoes and stuff like that happening, earthquakes, bad, like obviously hurricanes and stuff like that, probably bad tornadoes, things like that. So the only way to survive for the rest of the human race was to be in these, you know, underwater cities. And so the general who, you know, a military man was there, and he basically wanted to just like, he doesn't care about what they do to the ocean and all that stuff. Fuck that. And the scientist, her father, was really trying to do his best, but he was like stuck, you know, between a rock and a hard place, basically. He couldn't do anything about it. So instead, what he decided to do was he decided to help his daughter in any way he could by, you know, having her be in this underwater, like, little dome area. And that's what Argus found in the first book of the Whispers of the Deep, is they found like dome area, and that's where he found the skeletal remains of the human and the undine. So I'm like, they obviously were with each other for the rest of their lives. So I was like, at least I got that, you know, like, at least I got, you know, like, closure, because I was like, what happened to these people? So at least I got that, and that was a really sweet story. I really enjoyed that one. And then for the Juliet Cross one, I gave it a 3. It was okay. But the thing I would say with Juliet Cross is a lot of it lately I've been noticing with her writing is it very much is kind of lust-based. And I'm like, I don't want it to be lust-based, especially because I'm like, her second book in the Sisters, you know, series, what was it called again? The Witches ones. That second book, Don't Hex and Drive, I fucking love that book. That book was so great. I love that one. And I wished that we had that same energy for some of those other books going forward. I mean, I did like that series, except for the last one. The last one very much reminded me of like stuff that you would find on fucking TikTok, where I'm like, stop listening to these fucking morons. No offense to anybody. These fucking morons on TikTok that are like, we want all spice. So you want all spice and no plot. You just want vibes. Fuck you. I'm like, I hate that shit. So I'm like, you as a writer, stop following what these young fucking morons are saying, you know, on TikTok. But we're like, we just want all sex. No, you want porn. That's what you want. You want corn. You know, you want erotica. Leave my fucking romances alone. So this is why I get kind of irritated with some of these authors where it's very much like lust based. And I'm like, where the fuck are the feelings? Where the fuck is the buildup of the relationship? Like with Emma Hamm, at least with there was that buildup of the relationship. Like you could feel how much Argus hated Mina because she was a human. But he learned to not hate her because he started feeling feelings for her and seeing like a life with her. And he had to get over that hatred. You know, that's what I loved about that Emma Hamm book, where I'm like, yes, this is what I want to see in a romance. I don't want to see this fucking lust-based bullshit. So with the Kings and Bones one, this was Murda and Valen. I hate her name. I'll just say that. I hate her name. Every time they said her name, I was like, is it Murda? Murha? How do you pronounce this fucking name? So I said, this is sort of confusing with the amount of different fae creatures there were in this fucking story. So there were wood fae, moon fae, other types of mystical beings. Like, it was like, oh, these are moon faes. These are wood faes. And I was like, what the fuck is the difference? There's so many faes. Where I was like, huh? I couldn't understand all of the creatures. So it was a little bit tougher for me to grasp. This is a little more high fantasy. I don't like this shit. I don't like fucking high fantasy. And so, Murda is a half-breed. Her mother was human. And she's about to be sold to someone when Valen, he's a creature with wings. I don't remember the name of him. But he's like some kind of creature with wings. And he saves her and kidnaps her so he can keep her protected. So he finds out she's a seer, like she can see stuff in the future, and that it can help his kingdom from some type of darkness overtaking the land. So it was okay. I felt like they got together too quickly. I did feel like they got together way too quickly. And I know it's a novella, but it's like, you can do a novella to where, yeah, it's going to be quick, but also you can kind of draw out that relationship. And I don't care if they get together sort of toward the end. With that, it's like, okay, you drew out the relationship enough. This here, it's like they got together like way too quickly for my taste. And it was okay. And like I said, the high fantasy parts were like, this is confusing. I'm like, I need visuals. I need someone to show me what these creatures look like so I could properly visualize them, because I wasn't able to. I kept thinking of her as like a human. I'm like, I really just couldn't like picture her in my head, you know, because I'm not really into high fantasy. You know, it's not my thing, you know, like when it's like another world and everything. I'm definitely more partial to if it's like paranormal or like a fantasy world. It's more takes place kind of here, but it's like a different type of Earth, you know, where these Earth creatures are kind of like maybe they've always been here or something like that, you know, that's everything. And that's easier for me to kind of grasp it, you know. When it comes to like these different worlds and stuff like that, it's a little more difficult for me to understand. So the last one, I really enjoyed that. I did not put a star rating, but I'm pretty sure I gave that like a 4 or 5 star. So this was Zoe Draven. I definitely want to check out more Zoe Draven because I did like this story. So I definitely want to check out more Zoe Draven. So this was The Midnight Arrow. It was Marion and Lorik Raphael. So Marion is a witch and Lorik is a Kylor. She rescues him and saves his life. While she is healing him, they fall for each other. So Marion lives in this part of a, it's not planet. Yeah, I guess, no. It's some kind of, I don't know if it's Earth, but it's like, there's this part of the area where it's called the Veil, where, you know, it's close to like this area called the Below, where these other creatures live. It was interesting because she had these witchy powers, but also she had like this creature that was basically kind of like giving her this protection of like anybody from the Below. And you end up finding out that the creature was actually from the Below. And so he ended up befriending this witch. And I kind of think of it as more of like, it probably was similar to like maybe a dog or something like that. I don't know. I couldn't picture it in my head, but it was a really cute story because you could see the buildup of their relationship, where she kind of like didn't trust him at first, and then he, you know, he obviously was flirting with her and stuff like that, and and then you know like a little bit more about him. And there was other things that there was a twist to the story too, and I don't want to give away the twist, but it was really interesting. I really liked that one. I was like, you know what, that's a pretty good story. So I think I gave that a 4 or 5 star. I really enjoyed that one. That's why I ended up giving the whole book like 5 stars, even though that second story was like a 3 for me. It was decent, but I did like those 2 stories. I would prefer if they could go and do the books by themselves, because I would totally pick up Wave Song and have it in my collection for the Emma Hamm ones. But I really enjoyed that one. I wasn't sure if I wanted to pick up that anthology, but yeah, those 2 stories in it were really great. You know, I definitely would check out more, like I said, more Zoe Draven. I want to stick with like Emma Hamm, because I do like her real world building and everything, you know, the build up. So the next book I read was Song of the Abyss. I was like, holy shit, it's out. I could read the second book in this story. So this was Emma Hamm's Song of the Abyss. So I gave this 4 stars. I didn't love it as much as the first book, but I still enjoyed it. So we got Daios and Anya. So Daios wants to destroy Alpha. That's the one I said where it's all the Richie people live in there. And also the general lives there, who's been doing a lot of shit to hurt the Undines and all that stuff. So he wants to destroy Alpha and the other underground glass houses the humans live in. He and the others advise a plan to kidnap the general's daughter, Anya, so they could try and take down the glass houses. Now, Daios and his other clan members try to go there and destroy it, and they end up getting shot at, and he lost like his arm. End up losing partial his arm, and a lot of the other ones, some of them had end up dying. So I said, Anya is miserable living under her father's thumb. I'd say this one was a little bit more depressing, because her father was a fucking piece of donkey shit. This guy was a fucking horrible person. And the more you know about the story, the more you're like, this guy's a fucking psycho. This guy's a psycho. So she became deaf due to an explosion years ago. She had touched like a bomb and it had gone off. I don't know if obviously it wasn't like a huge destroying bomb, but it obviously messed up her hearing to where it would cause her ears to ring and stuff like that. So it messed up her hearing. So one day she sees an Undine in the pool. She's in this pool area, and they have like this piping system that leads to the outside area. He managed to get through the pipes and get through and get to the pool area. So she sees him in the pool. She's curious about him and swims closer to him. Then he starts showing up more frequently, and she wants to know more about him. So he gets discovered by the cameras, and then her home becomes a prison. She gets to the point where she escapes in the pipes, and Daios rescues her. So the way it is like, he started showing up a lot because he was like, even though he basically had to kidnap her, so that way they can, get her to tell them like, how all of it works, so they could kind of take it down. But also he started to become curious about her. Like, he hated humans too. He had more of a hatred for humans than Argus did. And you could see, because Daios tried to kill Mina several times in the first book. And so when he goes and sees Anya, he's curious about her. And so she, especially because she's curious about him, and she doesn't look like she's like ready to hurt him. She has no violent tendencies toward him. She's curious. So he starts to come around more often, and he gets to the point where he's showing her signs like, here's how to get out, because he sees that she's not being treated great by, her father and all the rest of the people, like the soldiers and stuff like that. Her home becomes a prison. They have cameras in her bathroom, cameras in her room, following her around everywhere she goes. Yeah, psychotic behavior. So she's like, fuck this. I would rather be out in the ocean, just take my chances, than to deal with my father anymore, So she manages to get through the pipes, and she almost like drowns, and he manages to get there, and he helps her. And so he takes her to this one area that is like it's one of those old areas where I guess some of the humans used to live, but it got messed up, so they had to move. And so unfortunately it's not very stable. It starts to break down, so he has to basically take her somewhere else. So he takes her over to Mina. And so you see Mina and Argus again, and so she's staying there with her, family. Now, staying there with, Mina and Argus. So it was interesting because their communication was a little bit differently. He had to start to learn sign with her because she, obviously was mostly deaf. She couldn't hear anything. And she had this other thing on top of her head that kind of like had a little visionary thing. And so she would read, what it wrote for her so she could understand what people were saying. And so their way of communicating was a little bit different, but I really liked it. But I'd say like the thing reason why I probably gave it a 4 is because it was a little depressing, because Dios is dealing with a lot of like survivor's guilt, a lot of guilt because he led his people to the area to try to like destroy these, human, the human glass houses, and some of them ended up dying. And so he feels bad that he led them into that, area, and they ended up getting killed. And then there's these other creatures that are like below down in like the deep part of the ocean that they often visit, and they kind of like see like visuals, like visions of the future and stuff like that. So he ends up going down there, and they tell him like, this is what's going to probably happen. Like this is going to happen. So you need to do this. So he very much dealt with like a lot of pressure of like trying to help some of his other undying, family and stuff like that. And then also, how is he going to make it work with Anya, and things like that, and all of that stuff. And then dealing with her father, who's a fucking psycho. So it had a little more stakes to it, it had a little more stakes to it. And it was, like I said, it was a little bit depressing because, the way her father treated her, and then a little bit more about like his backstory and stuff like that too in this book. And then I'm like, what a piece of shit. This guy's a major piece of shit, major piece of shit. Or it's all about like power for him, he's definitely on a power trip, and for her, like how miserable she was living in that, in her home, like for how many years, where it wasn't a home to her anymore, it was a prison. And that the fact that she would rather take her chances with their enemies, than to deal with that man another fucking day, I don't blame her. But yeah, it was a little more sad. But I still enjoyed myself. Still was enjoyable for me. And I can't wait for the third one, because the third one has this other character called Machetes. I think that's what it's called. How do you pronounce his name? Machetes. He's funny. I definitely want to see him have his happily ever after. And there's another character where you don't see the character, and you end up finding out, oh, it's another female who's a part of like this other area of Gamma that was helping out Anya. And so I think it's going to be their story. And so I was like, ooh, I can't wait for the third book. And that one there is coming out in, I think, September. So I gotta wait until September. So I'm like, ooh, I want it to come out because I want to read it. I'm like, once I got into the series, I'm like, oh, let's go. Because I love the world building. I love how they, there's this buildup of the relationship and everything like that. And I love that, I love to see that. When it comes to a romance, where I'm like, yeah, world building, fucking world building, and I want to see the buildup of the relationship, And if there's no buildup, then it's like, then what the fuck is this? Then it's a goddamn erotica, So the last one I read, 5 stars. 5 stars, love this one. It's getting close to the end. I'm like, no! So I ended up reading Homestead. This is the Kindled book series. It's called Kindled series. It's number 7. There's one more book. One more book and then we're done. But she did say at the end of this book, there's going to be a spinoff. And I was like, yes, because I'm like, I want to keep seeing this world. I don't want it to end. So I really enjoyed this one here. So this one's Homestead by Claire Kent. So we got the characters of Jimmy Carlson and Chloe. So Chloe and her grandfather have been living in the wild for years. Then time for them runs out for food. So they come down to try and get more supplies when they were shot by a member of one of these gangs. You know, there's like these roving gangs that kind of go around, kill people, and kidnap people. So unfortunately, her grandfather is hit in the neck and dies instantly. Obviously hit like, you got different areas of your body that if you get hit, you bleed out quick. So there's an area in the neck where you can bleed out really quick. There's that aorta that's in your chest that can make you bleed out really quick. There's like a few that will kind of like, they're kind of like, that's death right there. Because once that you shred that main artery, you're gone. So obviously it hit a part of her grandfather's neck where it killed him like that, And so she was driving this truck, and she was trying to get back, turn around and get back, because all of a sudden someone's shooting at him, So someone ends up coming out and starts shooting at the person who's on this bike. One of the gang members is on this bike. So the guy who shoots the gang member is Jimmy. And so Jimmy ends up like rescuing her and telling her, hey, like, we have a farm community by me. I could take you there and, get you help. So she goes there and she basically is trying to, do whatever she can, to help out. So Chloe grew up with wealth, and after the asteroid, she was pretty sheltered by her grandfather. So when she gets to the farming community, she wants to make a good impression and not to feel like a burden or for her to get kicked out. She's pretty overwhelmed though, and she struggles to keep up with the daily chores of living on a farm. So Jimmy is attracted to her and asks if she would come to live with him as his helper for his farm and to also warm his bed. She agrees to it, so she goes about being whatever she thinks Jimmy wants her to be. So I said, I love this book. You could see how they did like each other, but they didn't know how to properly communicate with each other, and it took them a while to finally openly communicate and express their feelings. So there is like some triggers in here, like there's death, like there's death of a loved one, but also Jimmy, very young age, him and his girlfriend, who were high school sweethearts, had went and got married, and they got pregnant like right away. And unfortunately, his wife and his child died in childbirth. So he lost them, at a very young age. And so he's kind of like been more distant, like he still has his mom and dad around, and he's helping them with their farm, and then he comes home and he does stuff with his own farm. So it's a little bit overwhelming for him, So he wants basically a woman who can, obviously help him around the house and cook and clean and different things like that. And, someone who can warm his bed, someone who helps during the nights type of thing. So it's obviously more of like almost kind of like a marriage of convenience, even though they didn't get married, but it's like a, relationship of convenience, like they help each other out. So they kind of like start sex like right away, like where she's like, no, okay, I'm ready, but she doesn't tell him that she's a virgin. And then it's not until a little bit later where he's like, how come you didn't tell me? It's like, I would have, been a little more gentle with you. And so you definitely could see like most of this book is like lack of communication, which I normally fucking hate, but I can understand why they were both like very leery about each other, because you're talking about, this is a post-apocalyptic world where they've dealt with a lot of death. He dealt with like his wife and his child dying, and then seeing other people around them die. You've got roving gangs, that they have to deal with, who want to basically kidnap you and probably, grape you and all that stuff. So, there's that. And then also there's a scene in here where one of these, like there's a couple of these guys that keep kind of showing up in the woods. And so they always have to kind of carry like guns with them. And so one of them tries to assault, Chloe. And Jimmy manages to get there and, you know, take care of it and kill the guy. But this is something that, you know, they have to kind of like deal with. So of course for me, I was like, yeah, I mean, she's worried about if she goes and opens up to him and, you know, and everything, that she's afraid that he's not going to like reciprocate her feelings, or he's going to like say something nasty to her and get it to where she would be by herself. And then also there's another thing in here. There's like a pregnancy, which is kind of like, yeah, you kind of can think like, even though he was pull out method isn't always a guarantee, you know. But a lot of the ladies in this series, they've kind of all dealt with a little bit of infertility because, you know, you got malnourished. You know, when you're malnourished, you're not getting enough like vitamins, things like that in your system. You're dealing with a lot of stress. All that stuff can be a factor of not having your period, you know. So she started to kind of like get her flow back a little bit more when she was living with you know, living on the farm. And so that one time, whenever it was, you know, boop, she gets pregnant. And now she has this fear of like, he may not want the baby because he's dealt with, you know, losing a child. He may not want to be a father, you know, when it comes to, you know, him and her. So they very much have to like, it gets to a point where they have to communicate with each other. And so it gets to that point where, you know, they start to feel for each other, and obviously he starts to fall for her, but he doesn't know how to express his feelings, you know. Like he even said, like when he was with his first wife had told him like, you got to open up and you have to talk to people, you got to tell people your feelings. So they very much kind of like were having that kind of flight or flight response with each other, where they didn't know how to be around each other, you know, because they went and started this relationship without getting to know each other. So, so it very much was like them getting to know each other and forming this stronger bond, you know. And you could see like when she had told him that she was pregnant, he was like, you know, you could see he was happy, you know, like he was happy, you know, he wanted to start a family and have a family. So it was very sweet. It was very sweet. Some people may not like her because the way Chloe was. Well, I don't blame her though, because how would you feel like your whole family is gone? You know, like she lost her parents, you know, like at a young age. Her mother and father were going to go to the wild area with their, you know, with her grandpa, because he even told them like, look, it's not going to get any better here. We need to get the fuck out and get in the wild where we're a little more protected. Because anything like in the city or even in a suburb, you got a lot of houses around. People get fucking weird when there's any kind of, you know, something. Self-preservation. People only focus on themselves. They don't care about anybody else. So they don't care who they have to fucking step on to preserve their own life, you know? So he's like, we need to get out. So unfortunately, these roving gangs came in and they killed her mother and father. So her and her grandfather just booked out of there. And so she was with him for like 9 years, I think. 9 years. And her father, like, or her grandfather definitely, like, it was like, he was, like, obviously stuck in his ways of, like, when it comes to, like, gender roles and things like that, you know, very much talked a little bit about, like, gender roles and those old school gender roles and how, like, the man provided, you know, and the woman, like, stayed in the kitchen and kind of, like, you know, did the dishes and cooked and different things like that. Where there's a bit of kind of like those gender roles when she was with Jimmy, but also he was more open to like her, you know, learning how to use a gun. He even taught her how to use a gun, you know, on the farm. You know, this is how you shoot, you know, that stuff. So, I mean, he was open to that, where her grandfather was very old school, you know. It just shows you like the sign of the times and how, you know, a lot of people get stuck in their ways and it's hard for them to change, you know, especially when those normal roles, that's how they worked. But to me, I liked that she wanted to kind of, you know, she wanted to learn a little bit more of like how to take care of herself. So that way she wasn't, wasn't vulnerable, to like, and there were a few other things that I was like, girl, get some balls. There was a few things where I was like, oh girl, you need to like, it's that fight or flight thing. You can't like cower. You got to fight back, So with her, I wanted her to fight back just a little bit more, but I can understand where she was coming from, where it's like she never had that, like her family, was wealth, so she always was pampered. And then, this shit happens, and then she goes into being with her grandfather, where grandfather was very much like, he's the protector, he's the provider. She just has to kind of like stay inside and stay safe. But that doesn't help her, by protecting her so much and sheltering this person so much, you end up doing a disadvantage to them. You don't help them in the end, because then they won't know how to provide for themselves when you're no longer there. So this is why, as a parent, as a grandparent, you need to teach your children how to survive on their own. So when you're gone, you don't have to have that guilt of like leaving them behind with like no skills, nothing. So I did like that Jimmy was willing to teach her some things, but yeah, he very much was like, he was like a stone, where he didn't want to go and admit his feelings and things like that. So they very much kind of like had this friendship with themselves, but they kind of like didn't know how to like romantically express their feelings and all that, so it made things a little complicated for them. And then they finally started to like, communicate, which was good. Like, I'm like, yes, you have to communicate with each other. I know this started out kind of awkward and everything, but you need to communicate. There is ways that you can communicate with each other to, and you kind of could tell like he was feeling things for her, because he would like do sex talk with her and like call her like baby and things like that, like nicknames, little nicknames for her. He'd call her girly, and it's like girl, he has feelings for you. Like, he gives you nicknames, he has feelings for you. So yeah, it was cute. I really enjoyed that one a lot. And then it showed a character in that one that he's kind of been throughout the whole series, and something happens to where it affects this character, and he has to like kind of go off on his own a little bit. So the last book is definitely going to be his kind of like his story. So yeah, that one there I really enjoyed, and I definitely need to get that one. Physical copy of it, so I have it for my collection, because it really did. There was only like maybe a couple of the books that I really wasn't a fan of, but all the rest of them I really enjoyed. I fucking love this series. I need to read more of her other name. Like, she goes by Noelle Adams. Claire Kent is her author account, and so I really like her Claire Kent ones better, but I need to read more of her Noelle Adams ones and see if I like any of those. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was really good. Next month, I'll be talking about my other books that I was listening to on here, this month, because I end up finding the whole series of this one series I'm reading right now, or listening to, where I found the whole series. So I'm currently listening to it, and I'm doing a vlog for it. So you'll see that one in June. Also, I decided I'm going to be doing a vlog for the Emily Rath book, was it called Pucking Around or something like that? That's a fucking long ass book. That book there looks like the goddamn Bible. It's so thick. It's almost 600 pages. So I'm like, God damn. So yeah, that one there, I am going to be doing a vlog for. I'm not sure if I'm going to enjoy it, but I'm going to do a vlog regardless. I did find it on audio, so it's going to go by it will go by faster for me, because I found it on audio. So I'll just say that. It's not going to take me weeks to get through. It'll take me shorter time to get through it. But that means I'm going to take more notes also. There you go. I'll be taking more notes because I have a feeling that one there, I may not like. I'll just say, like, when I picked it up, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. This one here is a white shoes. And I'm like, I'm not always a fan of white shoes because it's like, there's too many peens in the room, man. I'm just, and I also, there's certain authors that do it really well and other authors where I'm like, they don't do it well. So I'm not sure about this one. This one may be a dud for me, but I'm gonna listen to it. I'm gonna listen to it and I will get through the whole thing. I will get through the whole thing, whether I like it or not. I'm gonna get through it and I'm going to express my thoughts, you know? So I'll just say, I hope I enjoy it, you know, where it's the whole thing of, you hope for the best, but you prepare for the worst. So I'm kind of like, I don't know about that one. I picked it up and I was like, why did I pick it up? And I'm like, it's kind of like that FOMO thing of like, damn it, I just want to read it just to see, you know? So I picked up book 1 and book 2. So I'm gonna see. And so we'll go from there. And I'll post that vlog, the one with the Emily Rath's book. I'll post that one in July, so you'll hear my thoughts. So that way I have a whole month of like writing down my notes, you know, doing like, you know, writing down a review for it and things like that. Kind of get all my thoughts together because it has multiple characters in the book that have their perspective. I'm not always a fan of that because it's like, oh God, now this person's talking and their POV and this person's POV and this person's POV. So I'm definitely going to be writing down some notes for that one. And we'll see. It may be a long vlog for that, but we'll see. But yeah, that's all I've kind of read for this month here. I'm glad that most of the books I've enjoyed, you know, and the other ones, like I said, I'll be doing a vlog for May on those ones. But yeah, I've been really trying to like stick to like monthly vlogs, doing my best to stick to those. I also am going to be doing more of my Sookie Stackhouse, but that's probably not going to be coming until like August. I think I'll do one for August. I'll do the Sookie Stackhouse like part 2 for, you know, more of those books because I did find all the Sookie Stackhouse books. I found them on audio too. So I'm going to be listening to a lot of books in June, July. Yeah, I'm going to be listening to a lot of audios in June and July just so I can kind of like get through some of these books here. And I had posted on my threads that lately I've been trying to find what books are available through audio so I can get through some of my physical copies I have because some of them have been on my shelf for a while. So I'm trying to do that too. You know, so I'm trying to like, okay, let's listen to, you know, what I can listen to. I know there's like a cutoff point. There is a cutoff point. They always say like the stuff's unlimited, but I'm like, is it unlimited? Not really. Eventually you do hit a cutoff if you're listening to too many audiobooks. So I may get cut off. You know, I may end up getting cut off and I may have to like read a book, you know, physically read a book. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, that's it for this one here. I'm just happy that I had a really good month with my books. And I chose correctly, you know, I chose the right ones. We'll see what happens in June. We'll see what happens in June, especially when I start doing that vlog for that book. We'll see what happens. We'll go from there. But yeah, that's it for this video here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves, be kind to each other, and I will see you all on the next video. All right, bye.